Night City is a neon-drenched meat grinder that promises glory and delivers funerals. Cyberpunk 2077 filled that world with characters who scheme, fight, love, and die across its rain-soaked streets, and every single one of them has a story worth knowing. Today we're breaking down 8 major characters, what drives them, why they matter, and how they connect to the bigger picture. Let's start with the person you already know best. VV is the playable protagonist of Cyberpunk 2077, and on paper, that sounds completely unremarkable. Every RPG has a protagonist, but V is doing something almost no other game character pulls off. They're simultaneously a blank slate and a person with a death sentence. And that tension is what makes them one of the most interesting protagonists in modern gaming. Here's how it works. You pick a body type, a voice, a face, a backstory. You choose whether V's real name is Vincent or Valerie, though literally nobody in Night City ever calls them anything but V. You pick one of 3 life paths, Street Kid, Nomad, or Corpo, which changes your prologue and your early contacts. 3 completely different people. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter. Every version of V ends up in the same place. The Konpeki Plaza heist goes sideways, the Relic biochip gets jammed into their skull, and Johnny Silverhand's digital ghost starts eating their brain from the inside out. From that moment forward, V is dying. Not might die, someday dying. Actively, measurably, ticking clock dying. The Relic is overwriting their neural patterns with Johnny's, and there is zero way to stop it permanently. That's the cruel irony. You can spec V into a walking tank, you can max out every attribute, clear every gig, become the most feared merc Night City has ever seen, and the story has already decided you're not making it. Every ending confirms this. V leaves with the Aldecaldos, but the damage is done. V storms Arasaka with Johnny and either gives up their body or walks away with months left at best. The game gives you total freedom in how you live, and absolutely zero freedom in whether you survive. The community has spent years debating what Canon Vi even looks like. Street Kid feels the most natural to some, Corpo provides the sharpest thematic contrast, Nomad gets the most emotionally satisfying romance arc with Panam. But officially, CD Projekt Red has never declared a canonical version. V is whoever you made them, which is kind of the point. In a city that commodifies everything, including your actual consciousness, V's identity is the one thing that belongs entirely to the player. And yet that identity is temporary. That's the gut punch. Every relationship V builds, every choice they make, all of it exists under the shadow of a biochip that's slowly deleting them. V's desperate search for a cure connects every major storyline and every major character. It's the invisible clock behind all that neon. But V doesn't face that clock alone. At least not at first. Because before everything falls apart, there's one person standing right next to them. Jackie Wells. Jackie Wells is the kind of guy who makes you forget you're playing a game about corporate dystopia and slow death. For the first few hours of Cyberpunk 2077, he's your best friend, your ride or die, your personal hype, man from Haywood who genuinely believes the two of you are destined to become Night City legends. And honestly, you believe him. Here's the thing about Jackie, he's not naive. He knows exactly how dangerous the merc life is. He jokes through his fear, code switches between languages mid-sentence, and talks about making it big with the same breath he uses to tell you to watch your back. That blend of optimism and fatalism is what makes him work. He's not some wide-eyed kid stumbling into danger. He's a grown man who has chosen to roll the dice anyway, because the alternative is dying poor and forgotten in Haywood, which you know is also not ideal. During Act 1, Jackie is right there beside you for everything. The pickup, where you walk into a maelstrom den to negotiate for a flathead drone on Dexter Deshawn's behalf. Jackie's the one cracking his knuckles next to you. He's the deuteragonist of the entire first act, and the game leans into that hard. You eat together, you drive together, you shoot together. There's even a montage sequence that compresses weeks of shared hustling into a few minutes of cutscenes, which is where the fan debate kicks in. Some players argue the montage robs them of actual bonding time. Others say the montage works because it implies a depth of friendship that no amount of fetch quests could replicate. Both sides have a point, but none of that matters as much as what happens at Konpeki Plaza. Jackie dies during the heist. He takes a bullet, holds it together just long enough to hand you the Relic biochip and bleeds out in the back of a car. And that biochip is what shoves Johnny Silverhand's engram into your brain, which means Jackie's death isn't just sad. It's the domino that knocks over the entire rest of the game. What makes it land even harder is that the game doesn't just move on. You get to mourn him. You talk to Mama Wells. You decide what happens to his body. The funeral, the ofrenda, the quiet conversations about who he was. Night City doesn't pause for grief, but the game does, at least for a moment. Jackie's death is the first real signal that Night City will eat anyone. Doesn't matter how charming you are, how loyal, how many hours you spent bonding with the protagonist. The city's corporate machinery crushed him on the cusp of everything he wanted, and every mission you run alone after that carries his absence like a second shadow. But at least Jackie died believing he was about to become a legend. The guy who sent him on that job, he didn't even get that courtesy. Dexter Deshawn. Dex is the guy who makes you feel like you finally made it. And that's exactly what makes him dangerous. Before the events of Cyberpunk 2077, Dexter Deshawn was a well-known fixer in Night City who had quietly disappeared for a few years. Nobody knows exactly why he went off the grid, but in Night City, fixers don't vanish because things are going well. They vanish because someone higher up the food chain got uncomfortable. By 2077, he's back, and he's hungry to reclaim his spot. Here's the thing about Dex. He doesn't look like a threat. He looks like success. Expensive clothes, gold-plated cybernetic arm, slow, deliberate speech like every word costs money, and he's choosing to spend it on you. He meets V and Jackie at the Afterlife, the most legendary merc bar in Night City, and lays out the job of a lifetime. Break into Konpeki Plaza, steal a prototype biochip from Arasaka, walk away rich. He sends them on preliminary missions like the pickup to secure equipment, arranges the logistics, handles the connections. The whole time, he's watching, calculating, weighing whether V and Jackie are assets or liabilities. And that's the part nobody thinks about until it's too late. Dex doesn't see people. He sees variables. He praises V's potential, promises generous payment, positions them as a rising star in his network. You're gonna be big, V. Real encouraging stuff, feels good to hear, but the moment the Konpeki Plaza heist goes sideways, every single one of those compliments evaporates. Dex doesn't hesitate, he shoots V in the head and dumps them in a landfill. Not out of anger, not out of spite, just cold transactional math. V is compromised, which means V is a liability, which means V needs to stop existing. It's not personal, which is, not ideal, but here's where it gets devastating. Arasaka does the exact same thing to him. Within hours of betraying V, Dex is found and killed by Adam Smasher, Arasaka's walking war crime. The fixer who spent his entire career sitting above mercs in the gig economy, pulling strings and managing risk, discovers that he was never actually above anything. He was just another expendable link in a chain that goes all the way up to corporate boardrooms he'll never see the inside of. Dex goes from powerful orchestrator to corpse in a dumpster in less than a day. The guy who calculated everyone else's value got his own value calculated at zero. He thought he could outplay a mega corporation. He couldn't even outplay the afternoon, and honestly, that's the most Night City thing in the entire game. The hierarchy doesn't care how smart you are, it cares how useful you are right now, this second. And the moment that answer changes, so does your life expectancy. But if Dex represents what happens when you try to play the system, the next character represents what happens when you try to burn it down. Entirely. Johnny Silverhand. Johnny Silverhand is the ghost in your head that won't shut up, and honestly, that's putting it mildly. Born Robert John Linder in 1988, and Johnny went from military veteran to anti-corporate rebel to lead guitarist of the chromatic rock band Samurai. And somewhere in between all of that, he became the most prominent figure fighting against megacorporations and the corrupt American government. Frequently labeled a terrorist, which to be fair, he kinda was. The man literally attacked corporate facilities multiple times on purpose, but here's where Johnny stops being a cool rebel backstory and starts being one of the most philosophically complicated characters in any game released in the last decade. On August 20th, 2023, during the Night City Holocaust, Johnny was killed by Arasaka's enforcer Adam Smasher during an assault on Arasaka Tower. Dead, gone, body destroyed. Except not really, because just before his death, his consciousness was captured and stored as an engram, a digital copy of his mind preserved on Arasaka's experimental technology. That engram sat dormant for over 50 years until V stole the relic biochip in 2077, and Johnny's personality began coexisting inside V's brain. Coexisting is generous. Competing is more accurate. The relic gradually overwrites V's neural patterns with Johnny's, meaning his survival comes at the direct expense of V's life. He appears as a hallucination only V can see, speaks directly into their thoughts, and can sometimes seize full control of their body. The game forces you to decide whether to reject his influence, work with him pragmatically, or in certain endings, let him take over entirely. And this is where the community splits right down the middle. Some players see Johnny as a charismatic, morally consistent rebel whose hatred of Arasaka is completely justified. The man watched corporations hollow out an entire country, fought back with everything he had, and even in death his crusade continues. Others look at the exact same character and see a hypocritical, self-indulgent egomaniac who got people killed, treated everyone around him like tools, and frames every decision around his own personal vendetta. He can be genuinely cruel to V. He regularly prioritizes his unfinished business over the fact that you are literally dying because of him. Here's the thing that makes Johnny truly fascinating though. The technology that promised immortality, the engram that preserved his consciousness across decades, is parasitic. His anti-corporate legacy only survives in 2077 because it's consuming someone else's body. The great rebel against corporate exploitation continues his fight by hijacking another person's mind without their consent, which is, not ideal. There are ongoing debates about whether Johnny genuinely grows over the course of the game. If you pursue his side quests and explore certain endings, there are moments where he acknowledges V as a person rather than a vessel. Some players point to these beats as evidence of real character development. Others argue his core egoism never budges, and any apparent growth is just Johnny being strategic enough to keep his host cooperative long enough to finish what he started. I don't know what to tell you. Both readings are completely valid, and that's what makes him one of the best written characters in the game. He's simultaneously the guy you want to grab a beer with, and the guy who's literally killing you from the inside out. But if Johnny's whole deal is the tension between legacy and selfishness, the next character is almost the opposite. Someone whose entire arc is built around protecting other people, even when Night City makes that nearly impossible. Judy Alvarez. Most characters in Night City take something from you. Judy Alvarez is one of the few who actually sees you. She's a braindance technician working with the Mox, and you meet her in Act 2 when V starts digging into what happened to Evelyn Parker. But calling her a braindance tech is like calling a surgeon someone who uses knives. It technically covers it, but it misses everything that matters. Here's what braindance actually involves. You record a person's full sensory experience, every sight, sound, smell, emotion, physical sensation, and then you edit that recording into something other people can live through. Judy doesn't just watch footage, she crawls inside someone's worst moments and picks them apart frame by frame. She helps V analyze Evelyn's braindance recordings to track down where Evelyn went and who she was dealing with. She reconstructs trauma for a living, and that kind of exposure changes a person. Judy is deeply, vocally critical of how Night City turns human bodies and experiences into products. Which makes sense, because she literally watches it happen from the inside. She sees what gets recorded, who profits from it, and who gets destroyed in the process. Her work raises a question the game never fully answers, but never lets you forget either. What does it mean to edit someone's suffering into entertainment? And how much of that guilt belongs to the editor? Then there's Evelyn Parker. Judy's grief over what happens to Evelyn is one of the most emotionally raw threads in Act 2. Without spoiling every detail, it's the kind of storyline that sits with you after you turn the game off. Judy cared about Evelyn, genuinely, and watching her process that loss while still trying to protect other vulnerable people in the same industry is quietly devastating. Now, the romance. Judy is exclusively available to V with a feminine body type and voice regardless of what's going on below the belt. You get two key moments to initiate the romantic path through quests like X Factor and Talkin' About a Revolution, and here's what separates Judy from a lot of video game love interests. She has a fully articulated life and set of priorities that exist whether or not V pursues her. She's not waiting around for the player to give her a purpose, she's got one. You're either joining her or you're not. This is a big part of why the community embraces her as meaningful queer representation in a major A game. Her interest in feminine V isn't treated as a checkbox. It's woven into her character, her worldview, her relationships. It feels considered rather than performative, and for a lot of players, that matters. Of course, you cannot bring up Judy without acknowledging the war. The Great Panam versus Judy debate has divided the cyberpunk community since launch. Judy's supporters point to her empathy, her moral clarity, and the quiet intimacy of her romance route. She's the character who shows you Night City's exploitation at its most personal level, not through gunfights or car chases, but through someone's recorded memories being sold to the highest bidder. But speaking of Panam, she's got her own army of loyal fans, and honestly, they make some pretty strong arguments too. Panam Palmer. Panam Palmer is the character that made half the player base consider leaving Night City for good, and I mean that literally. She's the only romance option in the entire game that offers V a genuine way out, not just a relationship, but a completely different life. V gets connected to Panam through Rogue's network during the Ghost Town quest. At this point, Panam is operating solo after a messy split from the Aldecaldos, her nomad clan. Her pride, her sharp tongue, her refusal to take orders from anyone, especially clan leader Saul, all contributed to her walking away from the only family she'd ever known. She's got the temperament of someone who knows she's right about everything and is furious that nobody else can see it. Which is, not always the easiest personality to be around, but that same stubbornness is exactly what makes her compelling. Panam doesn't half commit to anything. Once she decides you're worth her time, she's in. All the way, no questions. The romance unfolds across multiple quests, and this is where the game really earns it. Riders on the Storm, with a little help from my friends, Queen of the Highway. Each one builds the relationship through actual shared experiences: combat, campfire conversations, tactical operations with the Aldecaldos. You fight alongside Panam. You argue with her. You watch her wrestle with whether to go back to her clan or keep running solo. The relationship has texture because it takes time. The culmination happens during Queen of the Highway. Panam and V synchronize their nervous systems while jacked into the Basilisk, an armored military vehicle. They experience each other's physical sensations simultaneously. It's intimate in a way that goes beyond any standard love scene, because the game uses its own cyberpunk technology to create something that couldn't exist in any other setting. Strange, vulnerable, and it works. Now, the Judy versus Panam discourse is one of the longest running debates in the community. Judy represents a more introspective, emotionally complex partnership. Panam is the action romance fantasy. Guns, trucks, desert highways, synchronized neural links inside a tank. Both are excellent, but they're doing fundamentally different things. What separates Panam from every other option isn't the action or the chemistry, though. It's what she represents thematically. Through the Aldecaldos, the game presents the only genuine alternative to Night City's philosophy. The city runs on individualism, on using people and being used. The Aldecaldos operate on mutual protection, shared resources, and collective resistance to corporate encroachment. It's not perfect, but it's real community, and in a game where every other path leads to some flavor of loneliness or death, that matters. In the Aldecaldos ending, the clan risks everything to help V infiltrate Arasaka. Panam personally commits to staying by V's side regardless of what happens, not "I hope it works out." She's there. Period. It's the closest thing Cyberpunk 2077 has to a hopeful ending, and it exists entirely because one stubborn, hot-tempered nomad decided V was worth fighting for. She tops basically every romance poll the community has ever run, and honestly, it makes sense. Panam feels real in a way that's hard to manufacture. She gets angry, she makes bad decisions, she's terrible at apologizing. But when it counts, she shows up every single time. But if Panam represents the action romance path, there's another romance option that takes a completely different approach to connecting with V. And he's not even a merc. River Ward. River Ward is the most underrated character in Cyberpunk 2077, and it's not even close. While everyone's out here debating Panam versus Judy for the 1000th time, River is quietly delivering one of the most emotionally grounded storylines in the entire game. And most players never even see it. Here's the thing. River isn't introduced through a main mission. He shows up in a side job called I Fought the Law, which only triggers Afterlife during wartime when Elizabeth Perales calls V to investigate the suspicious death of Mayor Ryan. That means if you're blasting through the main story and ignoring your phone, you miss him entirely. Which is a shame, because his questline pulls back a layer of Night City corruption that no other character touches. River is an NCPD detective, which in Night City is basically volunteering to be the most frustrated person alive. The man actually cares about solving cases. In this city, I don't know what to tell you. During I Fought the Law, River drives V around Night City, walking them through the investigation step by step. You track leads, infiltrate a hidden club called the Red Queen's Race tucked inside a warehouse shipping crate, and eventually have to incapacitate an animal gang boss for information. The whole thing plays out like a genuine detective procedural dropped into a cyberpunk action game, and it works because River treats the investigation seriously. He's not posturing, he's not trying to be a legend. He just wants to know what happened. But here's where it gets dark. The evidence trail leads to River's own partner, Detective Han. Messages on a computer inside the Red Queen's Race confirm Han was involved in covering up the truth about Ryan's death. And River's reaction isn't explosive anger, it's something worse. It's the quiet devastation of a man who already suspected the system was broken but kept showing up anyway, only to find out his own colleague was part of the rot. That's what makes River fundamentally different from every other major character in this game. Johnny Silverhand fights corruption by nuking buildings. Panam fights it by leaving entirely. River fights it by filing reports and knocking on doors. It's like watching someone bail water out of a sinking ship with a coffee mug. His later side quests lean even harder into this. You meet his family. You watch him try to protect children from genuinely predatory criminals. These aren't bombastic set pieces with explosions and tank battles. They're domestic scenes that feel startlingly real compared to everything else in Night City. The quietness is the point. Not every meaningful story needs a nuclear detonation. River is also a romance option, exclusively for V with a feminine body type and voice. His romance path is less let's storm a corporate fortress together, and more let's sit on a water tower and talk about whether any of this matters, which might be the most radical thing anyone does in this game. The big question River's storyline raises is whether working within the system counts as resistance or just slow surrender. Night City's answer seems pretty clear. The system chews up people like River and spits them out, but the fact that he keeps going anyway, that he refuses to become Han. says something about the kind of stubbornness that doesn't make legends but maybe should. But if River represents the quiet, institutional side of Night City's resistance, the next character represents its loud, legendary past. Someone who was burning this city down before V was even born. Rogue Amendiares. Most people in Night City burn bright and die fast. That's practically the city's motto. But Rogue Amendiares did something almost nobody else managed. She burned bright and kept breathing. As a teenager, Rogue looked at gang life, decided the rigid hierarchy wasn't for her, and walked away to become a solo. Not a gangster with a crew. Not a corpo with a safety net. One person, one set of skills, zero backup plan. By the 2010s, she'd built a reputation as one of Night City's most dangerous mercenaries, running jobs that most people wouldn't survive, let alone profit from. During the 2020s, she worked alongside Johnny Silverhand on raids against Arasaka. In the flashback sequences, you see her clearly. She's sharp, she's tactical, and she's the one actually thinking 3 moves ahead while Johnny is busy being Johnny. She was there for the Arasaka Tower assault, the one that got Johnny killed. She watched the revolution fail in real time and she survived it. Here's where it gets interesting. By 2077, Rogue hasn't just survived, she's evolved. She owns the Afterlife, Night City's most famous nightclub, and the central hub for every serious mercenary contract in the city. She's explicitly described as the city's best fixer. Not one of the best. That title means decades of deals, leverage, information networks, and a reputation so ironclad that every merc in the city knows her name. Think about what that transition represents. She went from kicking down doors and shooting people in the face to running the entire game from behind a booth in a nightclub. She traded her gun for a phone, her combat armor for business sense, and her idealism for pragmatism. That's what survival costs in Night City. You don't get to stay a legend and stay alive, you pick one. And unlike Johnny, who exists only as a digital ghost trapped in someone else's skull, Rogue is flesh and blood. She connects V to Panam through the Ghost Town quest, linking her influence across both the urban underworld and the Nomad storylines. Her network is that deep, she's the thread that ties the old world to the new one. But here's the tragic part. In certain endings, Rogue agrees to join Johnny and V for one final assault on Arasaka. She knows what happened last time. She was there. She spent 50 years building a life specifically designed to avoid making that mistake again. And she does it anyway, and it kills her. Fans call her the adult in the room, and that's exactly right. She's the one character who understands Night City's game so completely that when she chooses to risk everything, it means something different than when anyone else does. V is desperate. Johnny is reckless. But Rogue knows better. She has decades of evidence that this is a terrible idea. She does it with her eyes wide open. That's the real trap Night City sets. It's not dying young before you learn anything. It's living long enough to know exactly how dangerous something is, understanding in your bones that it will probably end badly, and choosing to do it anyway because some part of you never stopped being that rebellious teenager who walked away from the gangs and decided to fight on her own terms. Rogue Amendiares is the living bridge between Cyberpunk's past and its future, and sometimes bridges burn. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now